just hold it at about 45 degrees when the fish runs. The night before I head out, I always do a visual inspection of my tackle just to make sure that nothing's broken or damaged. I do this by winding the reel, checking the drag, looking for any broken or loose screws, and on the rods I check the guides, check the reel seat, especially looking at the tip, because if you get a damaged tip it cannot show up until you actually hook a good fish, and then it can fray your line. Transporting your rods and reels can be a problem, especially long rods when you've got to put them in cars or in small boats. Now the best way to do this is without doubt in a rod tube. Preferably put your rod in a rod bag first. Most good quality rods do come with a rod bag. Rod tubes, you can buy commercially made ones which are excellent, which will telescope out to the length of your rod. Or as an alternative, you can go to a hardware store and get a PVC pipe with a screw-in end cap. This is really good because you can add it to the roof rack of your car and have the rods stored carefully in there. If you can't do that, when you put your rods inside a car, make sure you're careful not to bang the tip or leave tips hanging outside the door. I've seen it happen. And also don't carry your rods rigged, because if you're putting it in a car and a hook hooks into the upholstery, A, it can damage the upholstery, but second, when you push it forward, it can end up breaking your rod. Always carry your rods vertically, not horizontally. If they're lying down flat, there's always an opportunity that you could drop something heavy on it, or you could stand on it and break your rod, and that'll spoil your day's fishing. Multi-piece rods make transporting a lot easier, and the modern ferrules they use on rods, they're called friction fit ferrules, or they're glass to glass or graphite to graphite ferrules, are very, very good, and they don't hinder the action of the rod at all. So when you're putting them together, I see a lot of people jam them in quite hard. You don't need to do that. Just push them on till they're snug and give them half a turn. That will actually lock them on. Friction fit is the name of the ferrule. To take it off, half a twist the opposite way and pull out easily. To maintain your ferrules, just wipe them down after fishing and put a little bit of wax on them occasionally. That keeps the friction fit nice and tight. When you're traveling in the boat, you obviously put your rods in the rod holder. Some boats have big rocket launchers, others have rod holders around the boat. Now it's important to note, the modern rods which have blank through construction can push against the edge of a rod holder, and they're designed to be fished out of the hand, not in a rod holder. So a severe strike can cause point loading on the bottom of the rod and cause damage to it. So either put some protective shielding around, and some rods come with a nice little hyperlon protecting there to protect it against pushing against the rod holder. When traveling in the boat with the rods rigged up, be careful not to hook your hooks up through the guides and with heavy sinkers or lures banging against the blank. This is a common way to cause damage to the rod. Most rods come with a hook holder, which is an optimum place to put your lures or rigs, but preferably don't have any sinkers or heavy lures banging against your rod. Put them on when you get to your fishing grounds. While you're fishing, there's a couple of ways that you can be careful and care for your rod so you don't create any damage. Casting is a common way for people to break the tips of their rods when they use a rapid swinging action and it hits something hard inside the boat. So where possible, keep the weight and the rod outside the boat when you're casting rather than having it inside or casting behind you. Another thing to look out for is when you hook that really good fish and you're getting it close to the boat, don't lift the rod above vertical or even behind you. This is called high sticking or point load the tip of the rod, and it can cause tragic damage. Just keep a nice constant bend in the rod, keep the line tight, and just hold it at about 45 degrees when the fish runs. If you do manage to break a rod while you're on the water, it's usually the upper section of the rod that gets broken. And CD and Okuma have got you covered there because they carry a lot of tip sections in stock. The further away it is, the higher you can hold the rod to keep the rod loaded. But the optimal way is to keep a good working curve in the rod, not lift it too high. And always, always land your fish using a landing net, gaff or a leader. So at the end of your day's fishing, take your reels off your rods, tighten up the drag a touch, and then give them a gentle rinse off with a water spray. Now, one of the tricks is not to have it too powerful because you don't want to force any salt or grime further into the reel. I also like to use some salt water remover, wipe the reel down thoroughly, and then dry it off. Same with your rods. Give them a good wipe down. Remove any ferrules, give them a clean. Clean your guides. Give them a gentle rinse off. Stand them up and let them dry. Give your guides a bit of a spray with some lubricant to stop them from corroding. And if your grips are a bit baity or messy, get a soft scouring sponge and just give them a wipe off. That'll remove any sticky bait and keep them in tip-top order. Again, dry them off, put them back in their rod tubes and store them carefully. Wipe the reels down, and then after you've given them a light spray, I like to give them a bit of a rinse off with some salt remover, and then I dry them off and give them a spray with some good lubricant like CRC Tackle Guard or something similar. It won't hurt your line and it'll keep your reel in tip-top condition for the next time you want to use it. The final stage is to loosen off your drag so it doesn't compress your drag washers. Take the spool off, give it a wipe round and lubricate any points that might look a bit dry or need some lube. Every once in a while you need to get your Okuma reel serviced when it's done a lot of work or if it's had a bit of a drowning or got a lot of dirt on it. You can send it into Okuma via your local tackle dealer and they will give it a full service, replace any worn parts and give it a thorough cleaning, dismantling the whole reel, re-greasing, lubricating it so it's ready for your next fishing trip.